to another episode of the Super Bold podcast. I'm Fred Joyal, and I interview people in all walks of life. Most of them have a profound impact on your business life and sometimes your personal life too. And my guest today is somebody who does that for a living. Mark Henderson Leary is an EOS expert. We're going to explain what that is, and an entrepreneur, and he coaches businesses. He's a business advisor, and we're going to dive right into how he defines that, so he's not pigeonholed into some guy who hands over a workbook and says, "Here, fill this out." Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Fred. I'm grateful to be here.
Yeah. And so, Mark, how'd you get started in the business world? What are some of the entrepreneurial things that you got into?
Well, I had a couple different business adventures. I always knew I was going to be a problem with and for authority. So I envisioned myself being, working for myself or being entrepreneurial in some capacity. And it just happened to manifest that it was in an IT services world. And so I got exposed to that and just found myself running a business, not really knowing what to do. And, I think my story is less about how I got into being an entrepreneur, because many people find their way there, either intentionally or unintentionally. A lot of it's unintentional. It was more about what happened when I was, 7 years in and still frustrated, stuck, felt like I was hitting the ceiling, repeating the same Sisyphean problems, like rolling the stone up the hill and it would roll back down over me. And I would be like, so close. We're going to totally be in the stratosphere soon with this next problem. And then that next problem would yield another problem. And I had a friend named Steve, and he had a business that was more successful. And he was on the other side of these ceilings. And he said, "Man, let me help you." And he, totally out of kindness of his heart, he spent a couple of days with me and my team and showed me some of the tools that he had used to grow his business. And there were some of the things that like Jim Collins books and some other tools that were used for entrepreneurial success. And it really changed my thinking. And so that allowed me to get clear on more of what I wanted from the practice, or the business rather. And ultimately I was able to sell it. And when I sold it, I used the tools I had been taught and kind of learned to help grow that business. And we tripled revenue in the 3 years that I was there, helping put that growth strategy on the ground. Even though I wasn't an owner of that company, I just sort of became this internal consultant helping use these tools. And it just made me feel so excited that it could be so much easier to run the business and get more of what we wanted from the business, which leads to getting more of what we want from our lives. And then I decided I wanted to be sort of this advisor, helper, consultant type. And I had these tools, and I had several friends say, "Man, there's this system, and it's called EOS, and it's in this book called Traction, and you should check it out, because I think you've got a gift for helping people with this. And I think this tool set could be even better than what you're doing." And I said, "You know what? I don't need some stinking other tool set. I don't know who this Gino Wickman guy is." And I put that off for 2 solid years before I finally read the book, met Gino, and my life was changed forever. Because if I have a gift to help people get what they want by facilitating and coaching, Gino has truly the gift to distill the biggest bang for the buck of what these systems and tools could be, to simplify how to really just put some basics in your business that help you get what you want.
Yeah, and I know many people who use EOS as well, and of course I recommend Traction to people whenever they're saying, "Well, I'm trying to figure out, I'm in a maze here trying to figure out how to make my business work." And I said, "Yeah, you don't have to reinvent everything." And that's what I did when I started 1-800-DENTIST back in 1986. My partner and I, we had to invent every aspect of the business, and we had never been business owners. I mean, and we had to create a call handling system. We had to buy a phone system. We had to create all the advertising. We had to figure out how to buy the advertising. We had to create the sales pitch, build the sales team, all of this stuff. And it was just the slowest MBA possible.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all aspects of healthcare have that frustration. I've never met anybody who told me something different, that people come into the healthcare world knowing everything they need to know about their craft and nothing about how to market, sell it, manage, coach, and all that kind of stuff. And so it's an unfortunate situation that creates a lot of dysfunction and yeah, so that's a big part of that.
Yeah. So you focus now. I came into the dental industry as a ad man. And so I had to learn about dentistry as well, and I had to learn about the client, about what that client needed. And so you focused your attention on healthcare providers, healthcare practitioners, right?
Yeah, well, I came from IT services world. I came from a help anybody who has a business kind of world, and that taught me the power of the principles that drive the tools. And I found myself several years ago with several healthcare practices who came to me sort of claiming that the principles didn't work for them, that they were different. And so, it was optometry, it was plastic surgery, it was, practice, dentistry. And they were like, we can't tell doctors what to do. It's different in these situations. We've got all, and I truly, the first healthcare organization that came to me, I was like, I really don't know what to do. Maybe they're right. Maybe it doesn't work. But I was like, all I have to lean on is these principles. So I'm just going to lie to them and tell them I know what I'm doing. And so I'm just going to, all right, no, you're wrong. We're going to create accountability for your physicians, and we're going to create clarity. We're going to manage this organization. We're going to develop a strong culture. And amazingly, I found two things. I started finding that in the real world, this was working. There were great examples, and it started working for us. And so what I found was that there's this chasm, because historically we don't tell physicians and healthcare leaders that they have a boss. We don't drive accountability. We don't have clear conversations. We don't even set expectations, to be honest. And so we don't really drive towards culture. We're fearful that we have. We can't talk about money because we know the doctors make so much more money than the people at the front desk, and so we just create this scarcity mindset. And so there's so much dysfunction that's built in for decades. That is the norm, and we all have experienced it. We've all seen that amazing doctor in an amazing system, and that front desk person who just looks like they want to kill themselves. And you're like, why is this why is there such bad customer service in the bad system? It's so weird. So I love just to kind of boil it down and say, like, when I work with a healthcare organization, the least valuable organization who's dealing in healthcare is healing people for a living. And so we can make an impact, and we can create a grateful, engaged, happy culture who is growing and thriving and loving what they do and creating great patient experiences. And so that was several years ago. And I've just kind of leaned into just digging into the deepest, most dysfunctional parts of healthcare organizations, and just bringing the stuff that's worked everywhere else to them with a little bit of a slant, because there's specific words we have to use to get people to understand how to drive accountability and do that kind of stuff. But that's the essence of it.
Well, and it's fascinating, because I will hear this over and over and over again as long as I've been involved in dentistry, is the professional saying, "Oh yeah, but my business model is different. That doesn't work for me." And it's, as we know, it's not that different. But as you say, the practice is almost dysfunctional by design.
Yeah.
And so you have to address that first, and because what we have is a really highly skilled professional, whether it's in optometry or dentistry or plastic surgery or dermatology, and they are really unhappy while being really successful at what they do.
So there's three things that I call the three practice perils, and that's one of them. One of them, the other three are, we need to make sure that the organization hasn't lost sight of its obligation to heal people, right? We need to put that out there and make sure we build that into the practice. And all too often, that just kind of gets put to the side because of reimbursements or because of, culture and the inability to hire people and all these sort of scarcity things that really take away from the ability to heal people. The third thing, though, or the second thing is we got to run it like a business, and that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing at all. We're going to manage people. We're going to measure success, and we're going to associate great outcomes and profit, and that's going to be cool. We're going to love that. But and we all don't do that very well. We don't manage people very well. We don't grow people. We don't create delegation very, very well. The final one is really the one that just creates the pain, and it is what I call hyperdependency. And hyperdependency is you've got one or more people in the organization who have a disproportionate, like exceedingly disproportionate ability to do and fix things. And that's usually that founding healthcare provider who can literally just decide, I'm going to work one more day a week and add 20% to the bottom line or 20% to the top line. And they can do everything. And without like exceedingly good discipline, their ability to rescue the organization is so powerful that they're way out of balance. And that you described it, like as the organization starts to become more and more successful, it levers and starts to destroy and crush the soul of these hyper-dependent people, because it's like, hey, it's going great, let's do more. It's like, if this gets any better, I'm gonna die because I have no more time and everything runs through me, and if I don't show up, nothing works.
Yeah, it's an unscalable situation, but they've never heard the terminology. They've never thought about it. So they don't learn to delegate. They don't learn to grow people. They don't have accountability. All of these things that you're talking about. And one of the things that you talked about, the word you threw out, and I think it's so powerful, is expectations.
Yeah.
This is one of the things they're really, and I was terrible at it. So when you hear we say that word, I was great at culture and terrible at expectations.
Yeah, well, most people are, right? And so that's one of the first things we do in the system. We start talking about right people in the right seats. Well, of course, you got to have right people in the right seats. What people don't realize is you have not stopped most of the time to figure out what those right seats are. Like, what are the jobs? And we do that for every kind of business. But I didn't realize until I got into the healthcare world that there's like a kind of an aversion to it, and particularly in the mid levels and up, like anything that's sort of licensed. Anything that's licensed, we kind of tend to think you're supposed to know what to do already. We need a dentist. What are you going to do? Well, stuff that dentists do. Like, well, what is that exactly? Is that customer service? Is that going to be? Are you going to consult? Are you going to advise them on dental procedures? Are you going to be? So what does that mean? In hospital systems, is it going to be research? Are you going to be diagnosing specific diseases? Or are you only going to be treating a specific disease? And these questions are like, people don't ask them. They don't. It's crazy to me. And so learning to teach people to say, like, when you say a doctor, we got to get a job description, and you're going to interview to that, and you're going to set expectations around things like, what are the hours going to be required? What type of patients? What kind of volume? Is this going to be a production-based culture or not? And making sure we understand all these things. And any kind of healthcare organization has done it. Like, I mean, literally 100% of the healthcare organizations I've worked with, they went through a period where they hired associates because they needed in volume. They'll say, like, I needed somebody to fog the mirror. I need somebody to do procedures or to see patients. And now they're like, this person is the worst. This person is not and now it's going to take me a year or two to replace them because of the cycle, depending on if some types of healthcare, you just, and depending on the level of position, you got to wait till next year when the candidates come through. Other times you don't have to wait that long. But all that to say, we've got to really change a lot of mindset that you can choose. You can absolutely choose, and you can set those expectations, and people can be happy and give you exactly what you want. But you got to start the process early.
Yeah, and when you don't set expectations, they do what they like to do or what's easiest to do, and not what you really want them or hope that they do, or worse, think that they're actually doing.
So that's a model I created in response to what I call toxic leadership. Toxic leadership is exactly what you're describing. We don't always think about that person who's doing we don't want to do as a leader. But I always say that especially a healthcare provider, by their very presence, is leading people. People are watching and people are following. And so toxic leadership has 2 preconditions and 2 postconditions. And those are a lot of syllables. This will make perfect sense to most people who hear this. The 2 preconditions are, if you have something that is scarce as a skill, you can't just get anybody to do it. We're creating a potential for a problem. The second one is if the outcome of this work is very high, if the stakes are very high, someone could die or you could save a life, then we have another precondition that creates ripeness for toxic leadership. We don't have toxic leadership by necessity, but those 2, if those are super high, we're inviting it like crazy. The 2 post conditions are, when we have that, have we stopped giving feedback, or are we giving inconsistent feedback because of those 2? They create a fear. And so once we have those going, we start saying things like, yeah, he was kind of rude, but we can't afford to lose that person because it took us 6 months or a year to 2 years to find that person. So we start lying to them. We stop giving them the feedback of course correction, even if they were perfectly great to start with. We just kind of back off, and they make an accidental mistake. They do something we could have course corrected, but we don't do that. The final condition is consequences. When we absolutely no longer associate feedback and a change in behavior, we no longer change the schedule, move patients around, and do things like that. Those second post conditions start to reinforce and encourage that bad behavior. So I was just, whenever you got that situation, you have to sort of steel yourself to the consequences and understand that you're going to be in those 2 preconditions will invite those second post conditions, and you have to build a leadership structure to make sure you're honest and you make changes when you need to get it done. Otherwise, you're not only just allowing it, you actually ultimately begin to encourage this bad behavior because you're telling them that, hey, great job. And you're whispering to yourself, except for that terrible thing where you're abusive to that nurse. But all they hear is great job. And they're like, yep, I'm awesome. So that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, well, a classic example is that I hear from dentists is they have this hygienist, and the patients love it. They say over and over again, the patients really love Angela. They always ask for her when they book her on the schedule. She's so great. Schedule's always full. The only thing is, she won't bring up any other treatment that the patient needs.
Right.
And I say, every time I say, you know what? You have a terrible hygienist who is really good at cleaning teeth. I said, the whole practice is built on her recommending what patient ought to be doing. They're looking to her as a professional. If she's saying, don't worry about that, you don't have to do that now, or she doesn't even bring it up, she's impairing the practice so radically. But, I can't let her go. And I don't want to upset her. And I don't want to correct her because the patients love her. They've completely fallen into the trap. Part 2 is they're afraid if they let her go, she's going to take a third of the patients with them.
Yeah.
So now she has no accountability whatsoever because of that. She's actually in charge of the practice.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and that's a part of that. So you really had that precondition too. It's like the stakes are very high. We don't have hygienists right now, especially super scarce. All the hygienist topic is a sensitive topic. We can't do anything to upset them. Either I can't just have anybody doing it, and if this person walks out the door, stakes are super high. So we stop being honest, and what we find is that there's really 2. We talk about right people in the right seats, and that's 2 things. Right people are people who fit into our culture, who really just believe what we believe. And right seats is, do they have the skills? Can they do the job? Do they understand it? And are they capable? So you got this capable hygienist. The question starts to become: is this a culture fit? And what is the cost of that? And I just see it so often where, I really can't give people advice always what to do with this, but so often I see people put off for quarter on quarter, like, this person, they're their favorite. We know we're going to have to do this at some point because it's a problem in the culture. It doesn't fit into what we believe in. We believe in full patient care. We believe that every patient deserves access to all the things we do. We don't believe we're trying to take money from our patients unnecessarily. We want to make sure they all have the option to prevent emergency care, even though emergency care turns out to be very profitable. It's not that's not what we're saying. For example, in this dental practice, we believe in preventative care. We don't believe in waiting for the emergency care, even though that is actually very, very profitable for us. We understand that that's going to create waves throughout the organization. And if we've got one hygienist who's not doing it, or two or three others who are like just demotivated, frustrated, and spending time gossiping, and it's just that we'll start to see the organization is sort of got a little bit of cancer in it, and we're going to have to deal with that. We push that off quarter after quarter because we're like, if she goes, we're not ready, and if she's the only good one. It's fully 20% of the time that somebody has that conversation, finally sits down with that hygienist and says, look, we love you. You're great at what you do. But our organization is really built around preventative care and whole dental health. And what you're doing is not acceptable. And I need you to be doing these things. 20% of the time is if you send the message that, like, if you can't work here anymore if you don't do that. The person says, well, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me?
This is the first they've heard of it in 3 years or who knows how long. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think people can tell that you know a tremendous amount about this, and so I want to talk a bit about boldness and how it's affected your life, because that's kind of my passion topic. And I talk about the bold moves people have made in their life that made all the difference, and also the times that they didn't step up, they didn't speak up, they just hesitated and missed out on something really important. Could you think of a couple of times in your life where you weren't comfortable, you weren't confident about the outcome, but you went for it? You went like, I got to go for this. I got to be bold. And that the result was you were rewarded almost unexpectedly for it.
Well, there's lots. The topic, and I fear challenge me on this if this doesn't get tangible enough. I'll tell you what really is on my mind right now. I call it the greater good. And the greater good is this idea that, well, we as leaders need to be acting with what we have co-created as a vision for the organization. And this can be in your life, it can be family as well. But I definitely think, if we think of this in terms of like, we're in an organization, we put a plan together, we put a vision together, and we say, we're here to really take care of families' dental health in a full capacity way. We like their whole life, their whole family, everything about it. And everybody says, that's great. Yeah. And we've got a culture of people who care for the patients first, and people, lifelong learners, and people who just really want to get the most out of, they're joyful people. Those are the 3 core values. I just made those up, but I can imagine that being not too far off some particular practice. And then we get into the running the business. And then we got, just like you said, you got Sally, and Sally's not doing that. And we're like, well, I know the greater good is this, but let's give Sally a chance. She's been working here 15 years. She helped start the practice, and we got to give her another chance. And that's that example. Because when I sit down with a team and I'll ask them, are you really leading and managing well? One of the questions I ask is, are you acting with a greater good in mind? And there's all kinds of things we ask, and sort of setting vision and setting expectations. But one of the 10 things, just one of those is, are you acting with a greater good in mind? And I'll tell you what, like 100% of the people I ask with the leadership team, I got 3 to 7 people from the leadership team in the room. And I say, is everybody acting with the greater good in mind? And I'm wanting people to be yes or no and open about all the things they're doing. I'm not doing set expectations well. I'm not doing that great at delegation. But when I get to greater good, they all say yes. They all say yes. And what I have challenged recently is, I know you're sort of trying to be open and vulnerable, but when you were asked to make a hard choice for the greater good, did you take the easy way out? Did you say, I want to avoid the conflict, and we're going to give Sally another chance, another year? There's so much sacrifice. And are you really acting with the greater good in mind? And I'll tell you, I've seen with my clients, I see it myself. I've seen it many times. I'm 53 years old. I started my first business in my 20s, and it's almost like I'm telling the opposite story. I can tell you 100 times I should have been bold, and I was not. And I didn't understand the invitation at the time. I didn't understand the invitation to be bold, and that was to act with the greater good in mind. That I had an opportunity to either avoid conflict or do something that was right. And I, as an optimist, as a visionary type, in our system we call visionaries and integrators, the two different types of leaders, the data-driven versus the emotionally driven, and we need both. And I'm the emotionally driven side, and so many times I've avoided conflict. I mean, thousands of times. And so many times I just said, we'll give one more chance. And one more chance becomes a month, a quarter, a year. And it paid massive prices for it, massive costs to organizations that didn't grow, losing clients, losing major deals, losing friendships over not driving accountability to the greater good. And so my challenge, and I'm really still working through a lot of this, and I think there's potentially a book behind this to really help people understand that I've always looked for that 3-point shot. I think that's the thing about boldness. It's like, this is the winning shot. Step back, outside 3, buzzer beater. That was bold. I've this sort of this reawakening that, man, boldness can be in a totally unnoticeable action. Did you let somebody get away with an unkind comment that you should have spoken up about? And is that your boldness? Like, inside, are you looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, and I've had to really challenge myself. And over the years, getting to the point where somebody I work with, I love working with them. And I have to say, it's not working. It's not working. I care about you. I want you to be successful. This is not working. This is the first strike of 3. Having to do that. And I've learned, in my IT business years ago, I had one guy who I just gave a million chances. And by the time he left, unsuccessful. I mean, this is a real story. This was a guy who I kind of told was going to run the practice as my number 2, and years of him failing to do it, and me not having the boldness to say this isn't working. He left so angry at me because he never fulfilled the dream, and I could never give him the dream. And he felt like I had broken promises to him because I wasn't bold enough in calling it open and honestly. And then the flip side is when there's people who I say, hey, I love you, but this isn't working. They move on. They become happy. We stay friends. They come to my birthday parties. And so boldness is in your heart for me. It is saying, like, this is the right thing to do, and I've got to man up and do something that's hard for the greater good.
That is so profound, Mark, that concept of, am I letting myself off the hook? Am I taking the easy way out? And what you talked about is there's an element of playing it safe. There's almost a little element of cowardice in it.
Yeah.
Because you have to be bold, you got to be a little bit brave, because you don't know how it's going to go, but you have to accept it. And as you said, looking back, the consequences of not being bold were very often profound. Yeah. Sometimes on the simplest thing that you just didn't do, or I'm not going to say something. I'm going to give him another chance. Yeah. I'm going to give him 14 more chances. Yeah. Little things that they either aggregate to you saying, boy, I'm not even who I want to be anymore.
Yeah, 100%. That's actually a great point, because it's the little, you don't pay a big price on the little thing. It's the 1,000 little things that we're doing for the greater good. Well, tell me about always takes care of the patient. Are we doing that here? Is that really, integrity really, is that really part of our culture? Always doing the right thing? Are you doing the right thing? And to realize years later, quarters later, years later, like, this is not the standard of excellence that I would have thought. And I think people like me are particularly vulnerable to it. And by people like me, high discernment, people who are very comfortable with the many shades of gray. I am envious of people who are just sort of self-describe as simple-minded, in a positive way, like, hey, I don't understand, I just do what's right and do what's wrong, or just it's kind of black and white to them. Those people don't get distracted. They're like, no, this is not, we're not doing this, we're moving on. people like me are like, yeah, but I can see the light. I can see the justification. And I'm just always have a little bit of an optimistic story that allows me to just take 1 millimeter of a movement that doesn't feel like much, that, like, to your point, years later, it's like, wow, how did I get so far? How did I get so far?
Yeah, it's 1 degree off 10 years down the line is pretty far from 90,
Yeah,
91 and 90,
yeah.
So 5 or 10 degrees, it aggregates, man. It either aggregates to your benefit or aggregates to the negative, sometimes in a very serious way. Well, Mark, this is an amazing conversation, and I always appreciate it when somebody puts a new enlightening to my concept of boldness, and this concept that you've introduced of, it's like, are you bold enough to do and pursue the greater good and act that way? That is really a deep insight, and I appreciate that, and it's going to become part of what I talk about.
Awesome.
So how do people find you, Mark?
PracticeFreedom.com is a great way. So I'm on the EOS website as well, but PracticeFreedom.com is probably the simplest, easiest way to get the podcast episodes in the past and get me that way.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for your time, everyone. I hope you found value in this. I found a tremendous value, as you know, as I'm expressing here. But Mark knows a heck of a lot. And if you're stuck or you're just trying to get better, you're good and trying to get great, it sounds like Mark could really take you there. So track him down, watch some of his podcasts and have a conversation with him. Utilize this guy.
Yeah, happy to help however I can. And that's a big part of my purpose. I believe that the first step in getting what you want out of your business and life is implementing a business operating system. But certainly, I can get you on the right direction. I can point you to the right book. If you need more help, I'm happy to do that too. But certainly my passion is to help at least 1,000 practice owners get what they want from their practice in life and make the biggest impact possible in any indirect or tiny way is a privilege.
Thank you. Mark, thanks for your time. Everyone out there, keep on being bolder and pursuing that greater good, even if it's in the tiniest way.